Hey everybody, Soulless Reviews here. You already know what it is. Justin motherfucking Bieber! With his sixth studio album, Purpose, if you count his Christmas album and My World 2.0. Now what am I looking for in this album exactly? Well, you see, Justin Bieber, in his earlier days, was a very, very cheesy pop artist. I mean, sold out to all teens, you know the deal. You couldn't go anywhere in the earlier days without hearing any of his mainstream music like Baby and Boyfriend, all that jazz, all that stuff that made teen girls go nuts. Soon, however, Biebs decided it's time to actually upgrade myself and not go down in history as that kid who just made extremely cliche pop music throughout my entire career. So what does he do? He created Journals, which Journal took a more R&B soul approach to his music, much more grown up, much more less pop bubblegum pop. It was definitely more mature and more enjoyable than his earlier work. The only problem was that Journals was pretty much a very bland project. There wasn't much to it. I mean, it was very subtle, and it just wasn't all that interesting. I don't think Biebs was able to really have his viewers pay that much attention to him because it just wasn't all that great of a project, even though it was better than his first projects, but better doesn't necessarily mean all that interesting. So what I want on Purpose? I want Biebs to have a purpose. No pun intended. I want him to create this music to have some kind of theme, give it a cross to us. I don't want him to just go through this album just to collect a paycheck, like $1 million paycheck. I just want him to give me some substance at least. I mean, yeah, I love hearing this R&B soul side of him. It's much more mature, but give me some substance at least. So that's what I want from this album. I want some substance. At the same time, I want a newer approach to his music. Not necessarily newer, but not like the cliche pop we've heard. I want that smooth side to him, but I want substance. I want that balance. I know he can reach that balance, and I have full faith in him, and so does a lot of people because this thing has a shit ton of pre-orders. So is Biebs going to pique our interest with something new, or is he just going to pass this along as another album in his career that we can just shove aside? Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to find out, and I am going to listen to Purpose by Justin Bieber, and then afterwards, I am going to tell you guys just how I feel about it. So, did Biebs give us that upgrade that we wanted from Journals, that more mature but yet interesting side of him? Yeah, to an extent, I think he actually pulled it off here. I can see most critics who take music seriously hating this album like all the way through. Its entirety is just crap and nobody likes it. However, I actually find myself enjoying more than I think the average critic would. Now, as you may have already guessed, the main issue this thing has is length. I mean, come on. 19 tracks long, 18 if you don't count the Where Are You Now acoustic, but still, 18 tracks? Holy fuck! Not many people can hold your attention for that long, and I'm sorry, Justin Bieber is not that guy. When you get towards the latter half of this album, like Children and Purpose and Been You and Get Used to It, it just keeps like repeating the same thing, not necessarily to like exactly same format, but it's just not all that interesting. Biebs is just trying to drag this album out, so when people question why he isn't creating music later on and maybe like a couple months from now, he can always point to the fact that there were 18 new tracks that you can go back to. Whereas, I feel like that's not a good approach an artist should have. I mean, if you really look around, a lot of artists just put a shit ton of music on an album, not exactly with the best intentions. I mean, people like J-Rock with 90059, a sweet, short amount of tracks, but he squeezed every single moment out of that, and he seized every second of it, and it turned out great. And I think J. Biebs actually possesses the talent to make an interesting album all the way through if he didn't make it so damn long. Now, where the first half differentiates itself from the second half is mostly thematically. You see, in the beginning, J. Biebs is actually talking about some matters that we kind of assumed he was going to talk about on this album, like the amount of publicity he gets and how it harms him and how those assumptions are made and how he's exploited in the media, how that hurts him, and I'll show you. And, of course, the emotional trauma he went through with Selena Gomez on Sorry. And Sorry is also like a double entendre. It's also he's sorry for the public actions he's taken, while also being sorry for his actions towards Selena. A lot of the shit that J. Biebs has gone throughout these couple months of his career are expressed in the first couple tracks on here, and I think that's what makes them so interesting. They're like better versions, they're like songs off of Journals taken on here and developed more conceptually. Because J. Biebs is still trying to go for an R&B side of him, he's still mellowing his voice, subtle production, he's still going for the same sound as Journals, but he's upping his game thematically and a little bit sonically, as there is a nice, there's some nice, interesting beat selections on a few of these tracks. But as much as I was able to put up with this album for the first listen, when I was going back to it more times, I really had to hesitate to skip. Like, not more so in the first half, but like I said in the second half, when we got to these more mellow tracks where J Biebs is just pulling some out of the blue concepts, and he's just trying to make us buy it, and I just really want to press skip. Even the hit single off this album, What Do You Mean, seems to fall under the same category of Journals in that it's kind of like a non-direct, take off of his Journals album. And to me, the track even resembled Confident a little bit. He gets frustrated when a girl doesn't know what she wants from him. He likes when a girl knows what she wants and is confident about it. So I feel like What Do You Mean had some relations back to Confident, and I didn't mind What Do You Mean, especially its subtlety in the first couple tracks. But as the latter half of this album, there's some songs that just talk about a girl, just bland. Like, he's just going on about a girl. They can't be related to Selena. It can't be related to his social life that we know of. So it just comes off pretty average and not all that interesting. Mentioning the guest verses real quick, Big Sean I feel like didn't pull it off all that well. I feel like he was very forgettable. I feel like they're trying to rebuild that As Long As You Love Me track, because a lot of people were reciting Big Sean's metaphors and punchlines off of that track, but this time around it seems to be weaker. Like, he's trying to really downplay his metaphors so like teens can get it. In reality, it sounds pretty bad. Like, I did not enjoy Big Sean on that track all that much. And I feel like Travis Scott does better when he's pulling J Biebs into his world, whereas J Biebs was pulling Travis Scott into his world, and it really didn't sound all that good. It was going pretty smooth up until like the 3:10 mark, and then Travis Scott came on with his auto-tune voice, and just really did not fit the track for me. I think really the only best guest verse on here, as you probably guessed, is Nas. Because not only does he deliver a verse that's good and it relates back to the topic of We Are, in that the relationship that they're talking about was destroyed by like rumors and media and stress and all that stuff, but the track also, cleverly enough, had piano chords similar to Nas's New York State of Mind, and also it was kind of like an old-school hip-hop beat, and I kind of appreciated that, but even that track that kind of triggered some nostalgia and was a little bit of appreciated of a track couldn't really pull my interest together all that much as it was in the latter half of this album. Instrumentally, like I said, J Biebs seems to be pulling in a lot more beats on this thing to hook you into it, which I appreciated. I did like Sorry overall because it had a nice beat to it. It wasn't like over dramatic, but it was pretty decent. And although trumpets appear quite often, especially in the beginning of these tracks, I did enjoy the trumpets on Sorry. Also on Love Yourself, where he seems to be channeling his inner Ed Sheeran, where he's just going completely guitar strings. It's just a nice guitar melody, and he's just kind of singing to us. I didn't think it was terrible. It was definitely a little on the more blander side, but it wasn't awful. It expressed J Biebs being able to not have a beat in his song and just going purely instrumental, and still putting together a nice track. Of course, there's a piano solo where Biebs is just solely singing over the piano on the track Life Is Worth Living, where, he's essentially just kind of reiterating, even through the hardships, he would know life is worth living, and I found that track to be kind of cheesy. And it seems toward the latter half of this album, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to create more gimmick songs to make more upbeat tracks, like on Children, where he's talking about who do we have in this day and age as role models to inspire our children. And it's just a little bit of a gimmick song, not necessarily for pop cheesiness, but more so to make him seem insightful and brilliant, like kind of like an insightful mind. In reality, it's kind of a cliche topic. And of course, the self-titled track, Purpose, where there's a piano melody in the background of it, and he's just essentially explaining to himself that day in and day out, he's still trying to find his purpose in life. And I mean, really, it's kind of a cliche topic. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm not trying to overuse the word or anything, but I mean, let's think about it here. Biebs is trying to add a little bit of concept, a little bit of cohesion into this project. So what does he do? Well, he can just try and make the excuse that he's talking about how his life has mixed purposes and he finds himself wanting something different the next day than the next day. It's just kind of like a little bit of a gimmick throughout this album. So I can go ahead and wrap this thing up for you guys. This is a step up from Journals, but it seems like it's only a baby step up from Journals. Biebs is incorporating more thorough topics about his breakups, his stress, all that jazz, but it seems like that's what we expected Biebs to have. What really would have impressed me more if Biebs would have thrown a curveball at me thematically. Instead, we just get some social issues we kind of knew he was going to talk about on this album, and then we get just nonsensical tracks where he's rambling on about a problem he has or some kind of love connection he has with a girl. Production-wise, there's a lot of cool beats here and there, and there's some nice instrumentals occasionally. But overall, I mean, it was okay. I mean, Where Are You Now really did not have to be on this album, and it had an annoying, Skrillex. I don't mind Biebs and Skrillex, but I just don't think they're the best thing in the world. I feel like one song is enough. Really, Skrillex appeared a couple times in the production list for this thing. I enjoyed more of the beats because it held my attention more, but at the same time, it kind of showed where J Beebs was trying to rely on your attention being held with the beats and not necessarily what he's talking about. Which isn't always the case, but there are some tracks that are very simplistic but have a better beat to them and kind of trick you into thinking that they're better than they actually are. If this album was at least cut in half, I probably would have enjoyed it a hell of a lot more, but the fact that he drew it out so much just to give his fans a shit ton of music, it really kind of demotes the value of this thing. Although it's not as much of a gimmick album, it still seems to feed off the idea that a lot of J Beeb's fans are going to buy this thing anyways, and he's just trying to incorporate some simplistic conception to make his fans think he's deeper than he actually is. Whereas I believe I enjoyed this album probably a hell of a lot more than some critics will. I bet you a lot of people are going to tear this thing to the ground. It's not fantastic. It just was able to hold my attention and interest me a little bit. Like, I didn't mind Sorry or Mark My Words, which were, they were both kind of like sappy songs about Selena Gomez, but still, the beginning tracks on here weren't as bad as I thought. There was some conception to them, and there was some nice production, and it held my interest. It just started to fade towards the end of this album, and overall, it's just decent. It's okay at best. To be completely honest with you guys, I would say, yeah, check it out, but, once. It's honestly good for, one good listen. If you're a pop listener, if you're just, a casual music listener, then this might be a little too cheesy for you. Even though it's not, completely cheesy, it's still a little cheesy. But, it's decent pop. It's not horrible. It's not great. It falls somewhere in the middle. That's what you would expect J Beebs to talk about, is issues and then some other bullshit about girls. So, yeah, that is all I got for you guys. If you would like to like or subscribe, that'd be awesome. I really appreciate it, and till next time, Soulless Reviews.